Ikram Foundation. I'm on their advisory board, is to help widows and divorced women, many who are victims of domestic violence, obtain education and further job, training for them to be financially, stable post-divorce, because we really need to, be there for our Muslim sisters that are divorced and widowed. I have worked with ICNA Relief in Orlando to help open up a safe space for victims of domestic violence here locally. I've worked with organizations and spoken around the world, for victims of domestic violence. But I formerly worked with Muslim Aid USA, and they have been such a blessing. It's an organization that helps, with direct aid all around the world, but they have allowed me to, help raise awareness for domestic violence. And also we did a campaign last year, and we're planning another one. We raised over $100,000 to support a safe space in New York City. And then victims of gender-based violence, victims in Somalia. That was one project, and now we're working on a much grander project to open up a safe space in New York as well. This is going to be one that's run by us, and they are going to be using me to kind of be the director of it, and really not just a space where women can go to find a bed. We're going to be there to help them to rebuild their life, finding legal assistance, job training, therapy and counseling for all the trauma that they've received. Because once a victim is out of an abusive marriage, they're not really out. They're really not. They have to deal with the legal battle. They have to deal with maybe harassment from their ex. They have to, now, oftentimes they cut off the money. That's what happened to me. So they now have to figure out a way to support themselves and oftentimes children in order so they don't have to go back to the abusive relationship. So it's something that's very personal to me because I am a survivor of domestic violence. And so I've dedicated my life to creating awareness and hopefully helping a lot of other women. And men too. Men do go through domestic violence as well. We don't talk about it a lot, but I typically focus on women. I always mention that men go through domestic violence as well, but it's much more prevalent against women. And the reason why I focus on women is because oftentimes men hold the power. They often have the financial power. They often have the power from the community. They often, women are often having to deal with victim blaming. So I speak out more focused on women, but I also mention that abuse does happen to men as well.
Yeah, that's so true. Tell me something. Seeing that you have been involved in this sort of charitable work and community services pertaining to domestic violence, what, on a count from 1 to 10, what are like some of the top issues that women face in domestic violence in America? I mean, I know you said you work with people all over the world, but let's talk about America. What are some, or maybe Muslims and women in general, what are some of the top few things that you can recall in your experience in dealing with people that, I mean, this will help some of our sisters out there and people to know who probably might be able to see signs if you mention it. What are some of these top issues that people face generally?
That's such a hard question because we face beyond what you can imagine. One of the things that I like to mention for victims of abuse is that oftentimes they stay for the children. Okay?
It's what?
They often stay for the children.
Okay.
They think that they're gonna break up a family if they leave. Now, not everybody has the means to leave, and so it becomes a very difficult choice, and it's a very real decision. Do you leave and struggle to pay for your children? Because it's a very real decision, and it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
They have the means, they have a way to get out. You're not staying for the children, you're leaving for the children. There's often this idea that you're breaking up a family, but She didn't break up a family, he broke up a family. And that's a mentality that we have got to change. And we have to stop victim blaming that because she left the abuse, she somehow broke up the family. His fist broke up the family. His abuse broke up the family. And that's not a family when it's filled with abuse. That's not what a family is. You spoke earlier about, when you are married, there should be a support system, and that's what it should be. The reality is that that's not always the case. Sometimes, when there's abuse, you shouldn't stay. However, again, it's not a case of it's that easy to leave. People think it's just easy. How is she going to support the children? Where is she going to go? Is she going to have to go back? These are all these things that, victims of abuse face. Now, post, separation, divorce, the abuse does not stop. There's often harassment. In America, specifically, you asked about America. I would say the biggest and most difficult challenge is dealing with the legal system, trying to navigate, making sure he pays child support, making sure he doesn't, he leaves you alone. It is not an easy process. It's a very expensive process, and it's a very stressful one too. It's like they're sitting there, using harassment and intimidation throughout the entire process when you're just trying to live a peaceful life and move on. So there's often times when there's children, the abuse doesn't actually stop. They use emotional abuse. And that oftentimes is worse than physical.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And that is one of the things your organization, I suppose, do by counseling and helping sisters understand. Because you're so right, Sister Lisa. Why would someone want to stay in a marriage that has abuse? That is not even Islamic. You are not supposed to. And unfortunately, a lot of people do not realize that marriage in Islam was designed for the couple to be happy. To be happy, not to go through domestic violence. And it's not even verbal violence you need to go through, verbal abuse. Islam was designed and has designed marriage. The Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah has designed marriage to be something of muhabbat, love, peace, tranquility, happiness. And if people would stay in a relationship only for the children, that's another abuse of the children, because down the road they are technically creating more problems for their children. They are going against the happiness that was designed to exist in marriage. And I totally agree with you that sisters got to realize that it's not that they are breaking up the marriage, but they are making a better life for their family when they separate. And that's why Islam has given the permissibility of divorce, because marriage was not designed to be unhappy. Marriage was designed to be happy and to be a peace and happy way of life.
Well, the reality is when you're in it, abuse is not a simple, it's not something that's easy to describe, because when you're in an abusive marriage, they have brainwashed you so much and broken you down emotionally that it's not easy to say, why is she staying? Why doesn't she just leave? Because the reality is they have brainwashed you so much to believe that you need him and you will not survive without him. And
Mm.
that's what would happen. So I always try to educate, anybody on this topic, that we should never ask, why doesn't she just leave? Because it's really, the reality is it's not that simple. She's going to face, she has a lot of challenge. I always say you should leave, but it has to come from her decision. And it's also not going to be an easy road. There's families that make it more difficult for women to leave. They'll sit and say, don't you do this to the family name? They blame the woman. These are real issues that victims face. In a normal situation, there would be a father that would remove his daughter away from that situation. That's not always the case. They sometimes say, don't you dare do this to our family and our family name. And this is a very backwards mentality. But it's the reality, and this is what I'm trying to educate. And what we need to change the way we think of these situations. We need to make it a safe space for women to come and leave, and make it as easy as possible for her to leave, and give her that support system,
Hmm.
because there's going to be so many challenges that she faces, and we need to be there to support her to make it as easy as possible for her to leave, because it's not an easy decision.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guilt that you hold in your heart. You feel like you you know, like you said, like I said, you broke up a family. That's the guilt that we have, but it's because we've been brainwashed to believe that we need our abuser, and that's just the reality.
You are so right. Well, you know what?